Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. This is a review of the Renesans watercolors that are imported from Poland from an Etsy shop that's right here in my state of Maine, out of Portland, Maine. A Little Creative is the name of the shop, and she sent me these paints to review. This is not a sponsored video, but she did send me these. I loved the paints, so I decided I would do a review on them. I've already recorded the swatching tutorial as well as the review, but I wanted to hop in really quick before that because I didn't mention the pricing, or I kind of guessed on some, but I want to make sure that's accurate right off the bat. So, and also yesterday she sent me these tubes. I picked out 6 colors that I really wanted to try, especially Potter's Pink. So you're actually going to hear me talk about wanting Potter's Pink throughout this video. Well, I just got it, so I'm very excited for that. And I also wanted to mention that these tubes of paint are 15 milliliters, not 5 milliliters, but they're only $5.50. So that's what I paid for my M grams when they first came out, like in the 90s. And I was just so happy that I chose those paints and that I got that deal before they became well known and more expensive. And since A Little Creative is the only seller in the United States, I'm wondering if when they get more popular, they might get carried by more people and become more expensive. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. So the pricing on these, the 15 milliliter tubes are $5.50. The half pans are $3.50, and the set of 24 half pans is $58. The set of 12 half pans in a tin is $30. You can get the tin on its own for $15, and if you choose, you can also get a free tin if you purchase 24 half pans of your choice. So there's many different options, so you can kind of figure out what's going to give you the paints that you want at the price that you want. I did swatch out, and you're going to see me swatch the entire sheet here on the swatching tutorial. We're also going to do a mixing tutorial, but that will be along in a moment. But I also swatched out these 2 paints here, and I really love the clarity of the 2 paints. They have honey in them, so they're extremely, they pour down really flat. They're very wet when they come out of the tube, so you definitely need time to let them dry if you plan on taking them to travel paint somewhere. So they kind of do remind me of the M Graham in that respect, where they're kind of really liquid when they come out of the tube. So I chose ultramarine blue, transparent yellow, which is like a nickel azo yellow, quin red, potter's pink, burnt umber, and sap green. Sap green is the only one that I picked that had a multiple pigment, and they used PG7 and PY83 for a beautiful clean green. The burnt umber is an extremely clean brown. It is PBR7. I like this brown much better than the browns that that came in the 24 set. So, you know, if you want to try a color, this would be a great one to to try. The burnt umber actually even has a little bit of a warmness to it that reminds me of a burnt sienna. The Potter's Pink I've never used before in any brand, so I'm very excited to try that. It seems to have a little bit of granulation, which is gorgeous. The quin red is your PV19. The transparent yellow is a PY50, which is your like nickel azo yellow, and then ultramarine is your customary PB29. But I just wanted to kind of show you those with the lines so you can see how transparent they are, which is very, and just give you a little bit of background on the tubes, because I didn't have them at the time I filmed the review, but I would definitely give them a try. In fact, probably if it was me and I was looking to purchase these paints, I think I would go with the tubes. The tubes have just become available, but you really can't beat it for $5.50. Generally, a 15 milliliter tube will dry down. Like when these dry down, I would probably top them off again. So, you know, you're probably going to get 3 times the paint in a tube than you will in a pan, and a pan is $3.50 and a tube is $5.50. So I think the tubes are better value, but of course the half pans are good too. It just depends on what you like. So without further ado, we are going to go to the swatching. I also want to let you know of a special deal that's going on other than the free tin if you buy 24 half pans. If you use the coupon code FRUGALFAN and you spend over $60, you will get $3.50 off, which is the price of a half pan. So it's basically getting a half pan free. So there's a nice offer for you. I didn't really expect her to offer any deals since the prices are pretty low. I know she's not marking much up, and she doesn't even know how the company sells the paint so low. So definitely, if you're looking for high quality artist paint and you are on a budget, give these a look. Even if you just want to try a couple colors to mix out, they are a fantastic value, and I think I'm leaning towards the tubes as being the best value here. So now that this video was extremely long, we're going to get to the swatching and go over to the original recording that I did of this review and tutorial. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you over there. Today we're going to take a look at the Renesans watercolors. I've had these for a couple of months, but I was waiting to review them until the company that sells them right out of Maine, actually, who imports them from Poland, got more stock in, because I used them on this live stream here and they sold out of the 24 sets. So I didn't want to review it and then have people upset that they couldn't get a set. They have just been restocked, so I thought I would go ahead and review this today. And I also had a few people ask me about how I do my swatches, so I thought I would go over that as well. And just to give you an idea of how the paints look after you've painted, this is a wet and wet landscape that I did. This is a wet on dry bouquet that I did. That was from a Sketchbook Sunday time lapse, and I also used it on this pastoral scene here. So definitely a good variety and range of colors and different moods and stuff you can evoke from these paints. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how I do my swatches. And if you find this terribly boring, you can obviously skip ahead. And what I've been doing recently is I have been using these stamps by Waffle Flower to stamp out the cells for my mixing charts and my swatch charts. And let me zoom in a little bit here. What I do also, what I just started doing, rather than making two charts, is I've been going through each of these cells and connecting the top two lines. That way I have a line that I will be able to paint over and test opacity instead of having to do that on a separate swatch. That way this card here is going to fit inside my watercolor tin. I'll keep it with me, and I have another swatch I've already done for my swatch binder that's a little bit larger, where I saved the little wrappings that the pans came in and just swatched it out on watercolor paper, and that goes in my binder. And I've shown my binder in past videos, but basically I have a swatch in that binder for all the paints that I own, so I can easily compare quality between brands when I am trying to decide what I want to use for a product or for a project, or I'm also trying to see the paint range, the colors that are in the set. So these are those stamps I was talking about from Waffle Flower. I use this one here for mixing an awful lot. There's also a color wheel and a couple other color mixing tools here. There are dies available. I have not used the dies yet. I've pretty much trimmed them out with my paper trimmer, and I'm going to show you why. Because if you look at this grid here, which is 24, you see that it has 24 cells. If I stamp this out twice to make a 48 cell chart, it's not going to fit in my standard 48 or 24 pan cases. So what I like to do is I like to have my swatches laid out in the order that my pans are in my watercolor set, because that gives me a good point of reference of to which color is which, so I can tell at a glance. And then what I would do is I would just take my set of watercolors and I would set my swatch either above it or next to it, so that I would be able to look at that while I'm painting and make sure I have the right color. And I'll give you another look. This is one they sell on its own if you like to make very detailed swatches for each color that you have, like if you buy a tube at a time. It's really nice because you have one bar where you can just put like the full strength mass tone, and then you've got one with a swatch across already, so that when you paint over it you can tell if it's opaque or semi-opaque or completely transparent, room for the name, the brand, whether something is granulating, transparent, semi-transparent, staining, and then you can put the pigment number down there. So you could actually hole punch these, have them all together. I think the swatch does have like a little hole punch tag if you want to use that, and keep them on a binder ring. So there's a lot of different options, and this really makes it easy. The thing you want to make sure you remember to do is to stamp in waterproof ink. So I use Ranger Archival for that, and I will link that. But I'll link everything below. If I miss anything, just let me know in the comments and I'll make sure I add it. And so part of the reason I was gabbing is I had a lot of people asking me about these. I haven't used every stamp in the set, but I've really gotten a ton of great use out of these two stamps, and I just think it's a wonderful idea. I'm so glad somebody came up with that. So basically, you want to make sure you give your ink time to dry and your Sharpie time to dry, so that when you paint over it, you're not going to end up with with like bleeding or repelling on the Sharpie, sometimes I'll just go right in with my heat gun and I will make sure those lines that I drew are absolutely dry, because the Sharpie ink could repel your watercolor a little bit and that would give you a false transparent test. So you don't want that to happen. You want to make sure that it's absolutely dry. Before we begin, I like to give my palette a spray if I'm going to be swatching everything out, just to get everything ready to go. And I'm just going to use a synthetic round brush for my swatching, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit, but I want to try to keep everything in frame for you, just so you can kind of see how I go about all of this. Now the set of 24 comes with everything you see in the top row and the bottom row, and those are in the pan with the little clips there. And then these additional pans are ones that I've got separately, and I put magnets on the bottom to just keep them in place. I accidentally got raw sienna twice because I didn't realize that was, I thought I had yellow ochre in my set when I ordered the raw sienna, so I have that twice, but that's alright because that's a single pigment, where the yellow ochre I believe was a multiple pigment color, and all the pigment information is on their website. So the first thing I do is I will put in a swatch that is kind of watery. Now the white's not a really good one to demonstrate that with, but I do like to swatch my white to see how opaque it is. So I add a little water here. And I'll add the color kind of thickly over that line at the top. Then I'll blot my brush off and I'll just kind of drag it down just so I can kind of get a little bit of a fade, just so I can kind of see like how it looks where it's stronger, how it looks where it is more diluted. But I try to cover up my first line with the more full strength color so I get a really accurate reading of how, wipe my brush, how transparent it's going to be. Because if I put my line, like say down at the bottom, and I've already watered down my color by the time I get there, it's not going to give me a very accurate reading. So I go in pretty thickly up top, blot my brush, and just drag it down. I really don't need to wet the square because it's not a lot of space. I find doing this, I get a good feeling for the quality of the paint. Oops, I got way too much water there, so I'm going to just drink that up with my brush and just wipe it off there. I feel like I get a really good idea for the quality of the paint even before I've done a painting with it. That's why I often will swatch my paints right when I get them. Sometimes I can't figure out what I want to paint, or the paint might feel a little precious and I don't want to waste it, but if I know I'm going to do a swatch, I don't feel like it's so precious. I don't know if I'm going to show you swatching out all of this. That might get kind of dull. Get the red up there, blot my brush, and drag it down. Now, as it dries, you're going to see a true opacity. Sometimes it can look more opaque while it is wet, and as it dries, like you'll notice that a lot with the white, it will seem a lot more transparent afterwards. This crimson in there, blot my brush, and just drag down the color. If you don't think you got enough, if you think you were kind of light on the color, you can go back in and add it to the top only. Just repeat the steps. Blot your brush and either drag it down or you can let it flow. I got 2 cups of water here. Actually, these have been going for a couple of days and a couple of paintings, so I always use one brush to clean my brush, one bucket to clean my brush, and one jar for fresh water. And that it makes it so I don't have to change my water so often, and it makes sure I always have nice fresh water for my mixes. I feel like I have quite a bit of water in my brush there. That's a pretty color, isn't it? Now these colors are semi-handmade or mostly handmade. These were my first experience with any sort of handmade watercolors. When I opened up the pans, they looked like little blocks of chalk, and I was like, oh, this doesn't look very good. I was really worried that they were not going to be very good quality, but as soon as I touched a wet brush to them, they were ready to go. I do recommend spraying them, especially the first time you use them, because they've had kind of a long journey from their factory in Poland to the distributor in Portland, Maine, all the way to your home. So they may have dried out. Like, I haven't used these actually. I'm a little ashamed to admit. I haven't used them for over a month. So, you know, I gave them a little spray right before we started, but you can see the colors are nice and vibrant. And the thing that I like about these is that each color does have its own characteristics. Sometimes you'll get colors, like these aren't that expensive. A set of 24 I think is about $55, somewhere in that ballpark. So sometimes when you get color paints that aren't terribly expensive, you sacrifice some charm, I would say, but I feel like this paint does have a little bit of different texture between the colors, which they should because they're using different pigments, but sometimes with like some paints, you know, they all feel about the same, and these I feel like you've got some nice differences between the colors. Blot my brush off. That's a pretty color. Nice. I think they call this Paris blue instead of Prussian blue. So some of the color names are going to be a little different, so that's another good reason to swatch them out yourself. I'll just do my middle row. Now this middle row is not in the 24 set, and you're going to see that I have this color twice, but I'm just going to throw it in there because I figured it made sense for me just to keep it with those colors and not to just throw it in my drawer with my tubes, because I would never remember what it was if I did that, so it just made sense to keep it in there. Ooh, nice bright phthalo blue, which is nice and clean and very transparent as it should be. I really like the versatility of the stamps too, because you know, you can choose to put, like some people might do like they might just put color in this top area and then fade it down with like 50% water and then with like 25% water or something. It just gives you a nice variety for however you like to swatch. I'm not saying this is the best way to swatch or the only way to swatch. This is just what I've kind of settled into. And these little stamps make it very easy to do. But of course you don't have to do that. You can get a ruler and a pen or a pencil and draw your own cells. It's not, you know, it's not going to make you a better painter. It just might make you a little more organized of a painter. If you want to spend your money on the art supplies, then, you know, then draw the swatches out by hand. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a pretty green, isn't it? I'm expecting you to talk back to me. It should be a live stream. You guys could talk back to me. You'd be like, why are you swatching paint? All of the paint. This is pretty too. It's a nice sap green. Oh, it's lively. I think that chrome oxide green is hiding in this set too somewhere. Well, maybe not. That one looks like it might be, but it might actually not be. But that's all right because I've learned to appreciate my chrome oxide green after my last live stream. Take a look at this color. That one is a cobalt green, I believe, which is, it can be kind of similar to chrome oxide green, except I think it granulates a little bit more, and I do like granulation. There's a color that I've been wanting to try, but I don't have it, surprisingly, and it's hard to find. I usually don't see it in the art shops. I don't think it's a very popular color, but it's called Potter's Pink, and my friend Rich, the Spin Doctor, talks about it a lot, and I just saw Jade from Sadie Saves the Day do a color rundown on that color, and she painted a peach and it was just really pretty. It was just such a perfect use for that. But I also thought in mixing it would give granulation to some colors that might not have any granulation, and I just like the texture of granulation in my artwork. Some people don't like it. You might not like it at all, and that's totally fine because it's a personal preference. But I thought it would be really useful, but I have not come across any yet. It might just be one of those colors that's popular in England and not popular in the United States because it's not vibrant or something. You never know. Regional preferences. Ooh, this is pretty, isn't it? All of the pigment information, I can't remember if I've been swatching for like 5 years now on this same one paint set, so I can't remember what I said earlier, but they do have all the pigment information on their website. I will link that below. It's an Etsy store called A Little Creative, and I will link that so you can look up all that information. And they have the individual half pans and the sets, and they're going to be offering tubes. I'm not sure if they have the tubes yet, but they will be offering tubes in the future, what I saw on her Instagram anyway. I think it's so cool that we've got we get a paint store in Maine that's offering this. Because we don't have much for paint stores in Maine. We have some big box stores, but that's about it. Of course, this one's way down Portland, so it's nowhere near me, but that's alright. The Etsy shop is available everywhere. I'm not sure if they even have a store you can walk into. I got a little too much water on that swatch. Looks like a permanent green light or maybe a May green. And this is, I mean, this is the thing. Knowing the color that you have is much more important than knowing the name as far as when you're painting and you're looking at your reference. I can't believe that you guys are watching me swatch all of these colors. I'm going to scoot this up a little bit though, just to make sure that that's not falling off the bottom of the screen. Oh, what do we have here? This looks like another green. Oh, that's pretty. It's like a hooker's green, or kind of looks like the Russian green from Yurka. I'm gonna pull that color down. Oh, doesn't it just have such a beautiful quality to it? I like these. Now, sometimes I have tried a couple other handmade paints, and something that I kind of feel, and it's probably just because I haven't tried enough, but a lot of time the handmade paints feel almost kind of too weak and earthy for my preference. And I like that these have that earthy feeling to them. They have that, like, body's the wrong word because they're not opaque. They've got this kind of solidness to them, like heft to them, but they still are earthy and they still have vibrancy. So I think that's kind of a hard thing to get with handmade paints, and maybe because this is they're somewhat handmade, so there is some machine process. I'm not exactly sure what that is. I don't know how they make them. That would be a really interesting documentary, for me anyway. For me and everybody who likes to watch paint swatching, that would be good times right there. But I like that combination. And if I ever thought I was really kind of like a handmade paint person, I'm certainly not a making of handmade paint person, but I didn't really know if I was a user of handmade paint person, but these colors, I feel like I could tackle any subject, whereas with other handmade paint, sometimes I feel I've got to be painting something that's a little looser or more like a textured landscape or something very specific where I don't feel like I have that limitation with these paints. Oh my gosh, we're almost done. We got 2 colors left. We got this nice, looks like a burnt umber, which is, it looks to be a little on the opaque side on this one there. Probably should have thinned it out a little bit more there. But you can probably see what I mean about it, just kind of having this, and maybe it's maybe the pigment's not milled as much as a commercially made paint, so it's got this like girth to it, this grittiness. It's grit, but grit sounds negative. It's like it's got a texture to it, a texture that I find pleasing, because it's not like that white chalky texture that, you know, some paint has. This is a nice rich texture. So here is the first layer. We're gonna let that dry, and then we'll do our glaze layer, and we'll see how it glazes and also how opaque it is when you put like a thick layer down. I think that's really important to know too, because then you'll know like what's the thickest this is going to be. While our swatch is drying, we're going to do some mixing tests. So I have stamped my little color mixing thing from Waffle Flower, my stamp here. I've stamped it 3 times on some watercolor paper, and I always use the same paper to swatch, and what I use is the Fabriano Studio watercolor paper. It's 25% cotton, and it's or 20 or 25% cotton, the rest cellulose. It's very inexpensive, and I get huge pads of like 75 sheets of it, and I use that for all my swatches. And that also gives me a really continuous you know, kind of control group, so I can look at my swatches next to each other and know, you know, that I've swatched everything on the same material. So I'm going to start off doing a primary mix, and so if I look at my swatch, I would say that's my most primary red right here. So I'm going to put out 2 little puddles of it, and then I'm going to color in the red here. And I'm going to find what is my most primary yellow. I'd say probably that one right there. That one's in the middle. It's not really that warm, not really that cool. So I'm going to put that one right here in the yellow spot, and I'm going to make 2 puddles of that for mixing. And then I'm going to say, okay, what's my most primary blue? I think I would say probably my most primary blue here would be one of those 2. I'm going to say that one right there. So we're going to do that in our blue section. We'll also do 2 little puddles of that. So this is like a baseline. This is like your regular kind of primary school, red, yellow, and blue, and I will mix from that. These are usually not the best mixing colors, but it gives me a baseline. So I'm going to take some of that blue and mix it in my yellow puddle here, and I am going to make my green. I try to do it fairly equally, and then I'll mix it in with a little bit more of the blue and put that between. I need a little more blue than that. Put that in between the blue and the green. I'll just wipe my brush right off and get one with a little more yellow and put that on that side, so it just gives me that kind of range in between. And I'll do the same for the other colors. I'm going to grab a little more blue though, because I was using that up, so I'll mix that with the red to get myself some purple. Probably have a little too much water in there. We'll do one with a little bit more red than blue and put it next to the red circle. You see how this is going? And then we'll do a little bit more blue. And I'll put that on this side just so we get that range. And then I think our oranges will come out really nice. But the red is so strong. Put that right in the middle. We'll add a little yellow for the red yellow, and we'll add more red for the yellow red. Okay, so there we go. They're just our primaries. We have a really nice collection of colors. And what I do for that center area is I mix the colors together and go for a neutral. I need a little bit more blue. So it's either going to go more brown or more gray, but what you basically want is a nice neutral color. If you add a little more blue, you're going to get a little more gray colored. If you add a little more yellow and red, you're going to get more of a brown, but it just kind of gives you an idea of what you can mix with those 3 colors, and also how cleanly 3 colors from the set's going to mix. Sometimes you'll get a set where the colors are gorgeous and vibrant and beautiful, but you go to mix them and they're all very muted and muddy and opaque. So that's really important to know. So we're going to do the same thing for the other 2 colors. I'll pick the colors with you, but then I'll just do the mixing on my own because that's probably going to be a little boring. So looking at cool colors, well, looking at my cool red, I'm going to choose that that magenta color there, and that is not in the 24 set, but of course you can grab it separately, and I think they're about $3.50 a piece. I think each of the pans are $3.50, so you know, totally refillable. You can buy another pan when you run out, or you can get a tube. So, which is probably what I would do. I love working from pans, but I like to refill from tubes. It's just my own personal preference. Plus, you already got the plastic pan. You really don't need to buy that twice, and you know, keep additional plastic out of the landfills. So for my cool blue, I'm gonna go for my brightest cool blue, which is this guy here, Phthalo blue. Again, that's one that I added to my 24 set. There's also a 12 set, and I know the owner likes to use the 12 set, and she because the 12 set will just have 1 bar, and then she can fit all the other colors in that 1 tin if she gets a 12 set. So that's something to consider if you think you want all the colors. They're not as expensive as other brands, so it certainly is a little more budget friendly to collect a full line of this than other brands. And for my cool yellow, I'm going to go up with this one up here. It looks like a Hansa Yellow Light. I hope that I haven't pulled this out of frame for you guys at all. And so there we've got our cool triad. And I'm just going to go ahead and mix these so that we can see how those look together. Ooh, now look at the green. Makes a much better green. I feel like I need a little more blue in that one there. And then a little bit more blue for this guy here. Ooh, gorgeous! That's so pretty, I love it. I get a kick out of making these, so hopefully it's interesting to watch. Then for our reds and yellows, grab that there. Make ourselves a nice orange. Actually, gosh, the Cool palette does a really nice orange. And when you add when you have magenta and you add a little yellow to it, you'll get more of a true red, which is good. I need a little bit more yellow. That's not going to cut it. The magenta is a lot stronger. The magenta is still overpowering that. There we go. Even a little bit more yellow in the middle one. And then we'll do our violet, which I think this will make a good violet as well. Oh yeah, look at that. Cool colors tend to be more transparent, so they tend to make better mixing colors. And we'll add a little more blue to this one. And more red to the other. The red in this triad, the red is the strongest, just so you know. Ooh, very pretty. Now look how muted the primary one looks next to the cool mix. And then I'll do a warm mix. So I'm going to choose that red there that I used before, because that's definitely our warmest red. And oops, let me clean this up. The tin does stain. I will tell you that, because I even went over this with a magic eraser before I began today, and I couldn't get all the staining up. That's fine. That's nature of the beast, I guess. I haven't tried these paints on another palette to tell you if another tin would stain as well, but it really doesn't matter that much to me. For a warm yellow, I'm going to go with this one right here. It's like a gamboge. It's very pretty. Oh, I thought I was going to edit this out. My poor husband edits my videos now, and he's going to be like, oh my word. He'll know how to mix his colors, though. He'll be able to review these paints before long. Okay, and I want a nice warm blue. I think I'm going to go with the, I don't know if this is a cobalt blue, but I think it might be. It seems to be stronger than the first blue I used. I used this one at first, but I just felt like it was a lot weaker than that one, so I'm going to go with this one. I think it's going to mix a little bit better. We'll get a couple. I think that was the case. Let me just dip into that one just to see. Well, you know what? I'm changing my mind. I'm going to blot that, and I'm going to put the other one in. I think maybe I got myself confused. We'll use this one here. It might be that same one. Gosh, I'd have to review the footage. We need an instant replay on our swatching video. That would be like the longest, most boring video if we did like replays like a football game did. That would be horrible. Okay, so we're gonna mix up some purple. I need more blue. Yeah, all the reds are super strong. So I don't think you're gonna run out of your red paint anytime soon. And I need some more blue. Now I got a question the other day. Oh, crimey, I put that in the wrong place. Somebody had asked me, how come you go back to your palette like this? Like, I'll go back to my palette and I'll grab some color, and how come your palette doesn't get dirty? And I just think it comes with the longer you've been painting, you know, like whether your brush is dry enough that it's just going to pick up paint and not deposit any onto the pan. I think that's what it is, because I do that all the time and I don't seem to get mud. Get like a dirty pan. If I do, I just go in and wipe over it with a wet brush, and that takes care of it. Oh, that's a lovely orange. That's really pretty. A little more yellow to this side and a little more red to the other side. And we'll do our greens, which I think are going to be pretty muddy looking. But we'll see. Whoa. Oh yeah, we're gonna have muddy greens here. But it's actually kind of pretty. It's like a nice pea green. Olive color. I should probably have a little more blue in that one. And I still need more blue. I'm thinking those two blues might even use the same pigment. I think they both might use the ultramarine blue pigment or the cobalt blue pigment. I'm not sure. The way they're re-wetting makes me feel like it might be more of a cobalt, but but I'm not sure. So there's our mixing. Oh, I forgot to do my mixing. That would be a gray in the middle of there, but let's just mix these up and get ourselves our brown, our neutral. Oh, that's a nice rich brown. You always get rich browns when you mix warm colors. You also get mud a lot easier when you mix warm colors, but that's why they neutralize really easily. And I will do those 3 colors right there. We used this red, we used this blue, and we used lemon yellow right here, I do believe. Well, that's too yellow, so I'm getting a little more blue and a little more red. There we go. Get a nice gray. Learn to balance your colors, and there you go. So these colors mix beautifully and cleanly. Let's take a look at that. Gorgeous, crisp, and bright, which is not something you generally associate with a handmade watercolor paint. So it's almost like a hybrid, I would call it. Don't let the looks deceive you. When you unwrap them, they look like little cubes of chalk. They are super vibrant, and they don't rub off when they're dry, so that's good. Sometimes you'll see that in like low quality paint that they'll rub off. So not bad, especially for the price. And now we're gonna go back to our first swatch, which I actually did heat set when we were when I had shut the camera off, and we're gonna do another layer of swatching. And I have picked up a small flat brush for this because it's not gonna grab so much water, and it'll grab more pigment, so I'll be able to lay down more color and have it really strong, so I can really see like how opaque it's gonna be, like if in the absolute thickest I'm ever gonna put it down there. So I'm getting my brush loaded up pretty well, and I'm gonna do a stripe down the side. And I tried just to do one stripe because if you keep working it, you might end up lifting your color. And if I've got it too wet, then I'm just gonna blot it because that felt like it was really, really wet. Now, when your colors are opaque, you're not gonna see a real difference other than on that line when you go to do a stripe. Because opaque colors, they don't change when you just glaze the same color over it. I'm going to clean off that pan. There, I'll do that. And I also like using a flat brush for this because you can get right into the corner and keep it fairly neat when you do that. Sometimes you'll get a bead of water on the ferrule and it will slide down into your pan of color and make it really wet, so that's also a good thing to keep in mind when you're painting, because sometimes it can slide down onto your painting and give you a water spot where you don't want it. I gotta get that other brush out of there. It's swirling around every time I go to get some water. There we go. That red, you can tell and see how that you don't really see that line that I just stroked down there because that paint is pretty opaque, and that's why. Now you can kind of tell when you're looking at your paints by how they look in the pan. If they look really bright, chances are they are more opaque. If they look dark, then chances are they're transparent. And that's why it's important to do a swatch, because you can't tell what your colors are if they're transparent in the pan. It's just going to look way darker than it really is. So the swatch is very important. Like with that Bordeaux color, you really need that. I think that's Bordeaux. You really need that swatch. Now the violet is just so dark. It's very transparent, but it's so dark that it might be hard to see that line. It's a very strong color. Violets usually are. I wouldn't mind these blues being a little stronger though if I had my druthers. And we'll go to this one. I'll take a picture of the swatch from my swatch binder with all the pan names next to it so that you can see. But they've got good swatches on their website, hand-painted swatches, so you can see that as well. That was really helpful when I was picking out colors, aside from the fact that I bought the same color twice. No, I didn't buy it. She sent them to me for free, which is very nice. Do a stripe of that beautiful phthalo blue. So this set in the middle, these colors are not, except for that color is included in the 24 set because I got it twice by accident. These are not in the set, so you'd need to pick those up individually if you were getting the 24 set, and I'm not sure what's in the 12 set, but they're all listed on the website. I really like the greens. They've got a nice variety. I didn't do that one yet. This is a really interesting texture to it, but it's still transparent enough that you can glaze. You can see the glaze on it. Haven't done any glazing with this paint, so that would be kind of fun to try. I like that the tin is a little bit narrower than the than other metal tins, probably because it doesn't have that mixing flap to fold out, so it can save a little space if you're traveling with it. That's nice, or also just storage wise, it saves you a little bit of space. It's less bulky. It is thick enough for me to put my pans in there with little button magnets on the back. I think magnet tape is a better idea, but I just happen to have a bag of button magnets from an old project, so I didn't want to go buy magnet tape since I still had those, so I've been using those up. But they did fit in that tin, which was nice. You could also use glue dots. I think magnet tape's probably your best bet, because you can switch it around to other palettes if you want to, you know, make a little travel one with just a couple colors. It's just easier to swap out that way. So I'm very interested to think, I'm very interested to know all the people that asked me if I would swatch my paints on camera. I'm wondering if they still think that was a good choice, or if they're like, oh my word, be careful what you wish for, people. I'm fine by me. I usually don't talk to myself this much if I'm just swatching it on my own, though. That's one change for me. I don't talk to myself when I'm doing this. Listen to a podcast or something. Have other people talk to me. This is actually really pretty raw sienna, so I guess if I have to have one color twice, this is the one to pick, because it is a color I use. I use yellow ochre a lot, but I like a single pigment yellow ochre, a PY42 or a PY43, and that's what this pigment is. A lot of times raw sienna, a lot of companies have a mix of like PY42 and PR101, or has some other red in it, and it's kind of, and that's not everybody. Definitely not every company does that, but quite a few do. And I just, if I have a choice, then I'm gonna go with a single pigment. I think some do a PBR 24 maybe, or PBR 7 or something, but it's just the way they treat it differently. I can't remember, but in any event, that also gives you a nice clean yellow color. And there we go. So we can take a look at this and we can see the glazing properties, which they look pretty good. We can see how vibrant the paint is watered down versus fairly concentrated. And with the black line that we drew, we can see how transparent the colors are. Let's give it a quick dry. Okay, I've dried the swatches, and I'm even tipping them to the light. Even where I used them really thick, there's not much of a sheen on that full strength swatch, which is really good. I expected there kind of would be, because I did use it really thickly when I did the glazing layer just to see. But they look really transparent. The colors that don't look that transparent partly are because they're so dark, like that. Like if you look at that violet, you can see the black line through it, or I can, but it's just so dark that it's transparent, but it's very, very dark. I think that's the case also with the Prussian blue, and or what I would call Prussian blue, and this one over here, and then some obviously like the kind of peachy color there, and the white is going to be opaque. That brown looks a little opaque, and I can actually show you. I did go and grab my binder, and this is my big swatch. I'll zoom out. And what I typically do, if the pans have a wrapping on them, and this is a tip that I got from my viewer Afke. She showed me once that she saved the pan wrappers and then she swatched underneath them, and I thought that was a brilliant idea. So that's what I did. I took the pan wrappers, stuck them down on this watercolor paper, and then I did a very crude swatch. This was obviously, this is why the stamps really help me, the swatching stamps, because this is what my swatches look like when I don't have any guidelines. But it does give you a nice big patch of color for you to see. Here you can see those ultramarine. What I was using for ultramarine blue is this Poland blue, and this is Cobalt Blue Original. I did find that to be a little weak, but I actually was getting a stronger color from it this time than I was before. But yeah, I would prefer probably like an ultramarine blue, and I'm thinking that maybe they didn't have an ultramarine blue, because I think that's what I went looking for when I was getting single colors, and I didn't see something. Or maybe that was the closest that I could find. I'll have to revisit it, and it could just been the stock at the time. But all in all, for the price, I think these are a fantastic deal. Like around $3.50 a half pan, or $55, I believe, for the set of 24. I'll put all the information in the video description, but that's a fantastic price for 24 artist quality half pans. And then of course you can get tubes as you run out and refill them. This sap color, I call it sap green, is actually Cinnabar Green Deep. It's a gorgeous color. I just wanted to mention that in case you were looking for it. And Indian yellow, I was calling it gamboge, but that's Indian yellow. So just look at the hand-painted swatches on the website, and that will really help you when you're trying to decide colors if you're going like an individual route. That raw sienna is just so gorgeous. Now, there was no pigment information on the pans, but as I said, all the pigment information's on the website. I really do need to look it up and write it down in my swatch book. That's a good reminder for me since I made these swatches back in June. But there you have it. I'll show you the finished artworks that I did one more time so you can get an idea of how the swatches kind of translate to painting. They're delightful to use. I didn't have any struggles using them at all. I really like the palette they came in. You can see it's a fairly low profile. I might have a regular one just to, I'll just grab one of these over here to show you comparatively. This is just a 12 palette. You can see it's a little bit, this is a little bit fatter. So it's probably, well, maybe like a quarter of an inch, maybe eighth of an inch to a quarter, let's call it 3/16 inch flatter. So that's kind of nice, and I'm just very, very pleased with it. I thought they mixed really well, and of course there's a lot of mixing done on this painting, so you know it's going to perform just as well as any of your professional colors. And the paintings that I did with them are hiding on me now. I did this bouquet here. Colors you can see nice and vibrant. I didn't have any trouble with being able to get a really rich, vibrant color, and you also don't have any trouble if you want to get a muted color. So it's a nice versatile paint set that would be great for travel or for a studio set if you like half pans. And that's pretty much it. How long have we been doing this? 3.5 years? Wow, this is a long video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up, and let me know. There was something I was going to ask you if you wanted to see me do in another video, but I can't remember what. My mind has been has been consumed by swatching. So if I think of it, I'll put it in the video description or in the comments for you. And until next time, happy crafting.